So let's create your first homework list. In this example, let's imagine that I've just started teaching my Spanish students about the indefinido, which is introduced first in level A2. Now, of course, you can create notebooks mixing content from any level, but for this demonstration, I'm just going to stick to one to keep it simple. So I go into the library, go then into level A2, and scroll down to the section on verbs, tenses, and conjugations. And here you can see there are lots and lots of lessons. This is because Kwiziq lessons try to focus on one very specific skill that the student can practice. Many of the lessons here focus on conjugating individual essential verbs. So these are the verbs that are used most in general day-to-day conversation for that tense. If you want to see exactly what a lesson covers, of course, just click it. Our conjugation lessons teach the conjugation forms followed by examples of the verbs in sentences, and they can listen to those sentences being spoken just by clicking play. As well as individual essential verbs, you'll find lessons that cover verb conjugation groups, such as the AR group, or ER and IR verbs, which we cover in the same lesson since they follow the same pattern. Since these lists can be quite long, a quick tip to find lessons quickly is to use the find or search function on your web browser. I'm using Google Chrome, so your browser might be slightly different, but they all have a function that allows you to search for things on the page you're viewing. So for example, if I want to quickly find which lessons cover the verb tener, I can do Ctrl F or go to the menu and look for the search function, and I type tener into this box, and then the browser will highlight everywhere that the verb appears in lesson titles. This tip is especially useful if you're viewing the entire list of lessons for a particular grammar area. If this is the first time you've created a list and you only have one notebook, you can add a lesson just by clicking the Add to Notebook button next to the lesson in any list. There's also an Add to Notebook button on every lesson page. Note that if you have more than one notebook, these buttons will instead show you a list of notebooks, and you can then select which ones you want the lesson to appear in. Since my students have just started on the indefinido, I'm going to start by adding a small number of the most important verbs. I'm also going to add 2 lessons that cover the regular conjugation groups. As you can see, the buttons change colour to show which lessons are now in your list. If you decide you don't want a lesson in the list after all, just click the button again to remove it. Again, if you've created more than one notebook, you'll be shown them all here, and you'll be able to remove the lesson from any or all of your lists from this list. I'll go through managing multiple notebooks in another video. So let's go to the notebook now and see what's in it. When you share this with your students, it will look very similar to this screen, but they won't be able to edit the list since you created it. Since you're viewing your own list, the scores here are yours, and these won't change unless you take a test yourself. When your students view this list, they're going to see their scores here, and they'll also be able to click the feedback to see what Quizbot has to tell them about how they're doing. We'll see how these work in a minute, but before that, let's give the notebook a better name, and we also need to make this notebook public so that you can share it. It's important to use descriptive lists so your students know what they're about, but also as your lists grow, you'll be able to quickly find and reuse them. To change the name, click the Edit button. Give the notebook a suitable title. I'm going to call mine the Spanish Indefinido Basics, and I'm going to give it a description of what I've included here too. Now, I need to make the notebook shareable so my students will be able to see it when I send them the link. Save my changes, and here, my homework's ready to share.